Jobs from hell. The hidden architecture of global labor. The global economic architecture of the 21st century is a paradox, a fusion of dazzling technological progress and concealed layers of extreme labor exploitation, largely invisible to the everyday consumer. While developed nations debate 4-day workweeks and the ergonomics of modern offices, vast segments of the world's population continue to sustain this comfort by laboring in conditions that can only be described as hellish. This study is devoted to examining 13 of the most dangerous, physically exhausting, and psychologically destructive professions that exist today. We explore not only their immediate physical risks, but also the deeper systemic forces that allow them to persist. The biochemical ways toxic environments alter the human body, and the long-term socio-economic consequences imposed on working communities across developing regions. In its darkest expressions, the modern labor market reveals what researchers call slow violence, a form of harm dispersed across time and space, neither sensational nor instantaneous, yet devastating in its cumulative effect. From the caves of Borneo to the electronic waste fields of Ghana, from the toxic craters of Indonesia to the sewer tunnels of India, human labor remains the cheapest resource in the global value chain. This report is structured as a deep descent into 13 professional worlds, each one marking a boundary of human endurance, and each one asking the same quiet question: how much suffering can be hidden behind the comfort of everyday life? Biological hazards and subterranean extraction. Guano collectors. Deep within the vast cave systems of Southeast Asia, particularly on Borneo, an unusual industry continues to thrive: the harvesting of guano. That excrement prized as an organic fertilizer and as a raw material for the cosmetics industry. This work forces people into enclosed spaces that can descend the height of a 30-story building, where the air is thick with ammonia fumes, and every surface is alive with crawling insects. The primary medical danger of this occupation lies in exposure to the fungus Histoplasma capsulatum, the cause of a severe respiratory disease known as histoplasmosis. This fungus flourishes in soil enriched with bird and bat droppings. When collectors disturb dry guano deposits, microscopic spores are released into the air, easily inhaled into the lungs, often by workers who lack even the most basic protective equipment, such as HEPA-grade respirators. Symptoms typically emerge between 3 and 17 days after exposure, and include high fever, persistent coughing, chest pain, and profound physical exhaustion. In chronic or severe cases, the infection can spread beyond the lungs, attacking other organs, and becoming life-threatening without medical intervention. Histoplasmosis is also associated with a specific ocular condition, capable of causing irreversible blindness. The working environment of guano collectors is biologically hostile, an ecosystem where air quality itself stands fundamentally incompatible with long-term human survival. Chemical apocalypse. The Tanners of Hazaribagh. The global leather industry, valued at more than $100 billion US dollars, rests largely on a single process, chrome tanning, responsible for 80 to 90% of leather production worldwide. In the district of Hazaribagh in Bangladesh, and in select regions of Morocco, workers come into daily contact with a harsh chemical mixture of acids and heavy metals. The greatest danger comes from chromium itself. Under certain conditions, this metal can change into a highly toxic form that is known to cause cancer in humans. Breathing in contaminated dust or fumes damages the lungs, destroys nasal tissue, and leads to chronic respiratory illness that worsens over time. Workers often spend entire shifts standing waist-deep in toxic vats, without gloves, without boots, without any barrier between skin and poison. The consequences are written directly onto their bodies: premature skin aging, open sores that refuse to heal, and in extreme cases, fingers eaten away to blunt stumps. Environmental devastation completes the picture. Each day, tens of thousands of cubic meters of untreated industrial wastewater are dumped into nearby rivers, making surrounding communities unsafe to live in, and turning entire neighborhoods into zones of chronic disease. Digital graveyards. Electronic waste processing in Agbogbloshie. Global demand for electronic devices generates vast volumes of waste, much of which is illegally exported to countries of the global south. For many years, Agbogbloshie in Ghana was considered the largest informal electronic waste processing site in the world. Here, workers rely on primitive methods, burning the plastic insulation from cables to extract valuable copper, releasing thick clouds of toxic smoke into the air, laden with lead, mercury, and cadmium. Medical studies conducted on volunteers in Agbogbloshie have revealed pathologically elevated blood lead levels and abnormal creatinine readings, clear indicators of widespread kidney damage. Lead is particularly insidious due to its ability to bioaccumulate within the body. Over time, it attacks the nervous system, disrupts reproductive health, and erodes the organs responsible for filtration and waste removal. Agbogbloshie exposes a closed loop of exploitation. Technologies designed to save time and effort in the West quite literally consume human lifespan in Africa through heavy metal poisoning, collapsing lungs, and bodies treated as disposable components of the digital age. The economy of survival. Manila's scavengers and the phenomenon of Pagpag. In the slums of Manila, Philippines, in districts such as Tondo and Happy Land, extreme poverty has given rise to a singular and tragic survival economy, the collection and resale of Pagpag. The term comes from a Tagalog word meaning to shake off dust, and refers to leftover food from fast food restaurants recovered from garbage dumps. Scavengers race against garbage trucks to retrieve bags of discarded meals. The food is then washed, refried, and sold for 10 to 20 pesos per portion. For many residents of the slums, Pagpag is the only accessible source of protein, a kind of modern manna, standing between life and starvation. Yet the risks are immense. The food may be contaminated with salmonella or cholera, or sprayed with disinfectants at the point of disposal. Every bite carries uncertainty. Every meal is a wager against infection. Pagpag stands as one of the starkest symbols of global inequality, a world in which the waste of the affluent becomes the daily diet of the poorest, and survival itself is built from what others have already thrown away. Traditions at the edge of death. Himalayan honey hunters. In the high mountain regions of Nepal, honey hunters continue a centuries-old tradition, harvesting so-called mad honey from the nests of giant Himalayan bees. Armed with little more than handmade bamboo ladders and smoke to disorient the insects, they suspend themselves over sheer cliffs, often at heights exceeding 100 meters above the ground. The danger lies not only in the risk of falling, but in the biological nature of the product itself. This honey contains grainotoxins, compounds derived from the nectar of rhododendron flowers. In traditional medicine, it is used as an aphrodisiac and a remedy for high blood pressure. Yet consuming even small amounts, as little as 2 tablespoons, can result in severe poisoning. Grainotoxins interfere with sodium channels in human cells, triggering bradycardia, sudden and dangerous drops in blood pressure, vivid hallucinations, and, in rare cases, cardiac arrest. Honey hunting stands as a striking example of how a traditional practice is pushed toward extremity under the pressure of global demand for products marketed as exotic, mystical, or medicinal. What was once ritual has become risk. What was heritage now balances, quite literally, on the brink of death. Geological hell. Salt miners of the Danakil Depression. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is widely regarded as the hottest inhabited place on Earth. Average annual temperatures exceed 34 to 36 degrees Celsius, while daytime peaks regularly climb to 50. In this hyper-arid landscape, the Afar people continue a brutal form of manual labor, cutting salt slabs known as amole directly from the Earth's crust. The physical strain under such extreme heat leads rapidly to dehydration and the constant risk of heat stroke. Workers are forced to begin their shifts at dawn, racing against the sun to complete their quota before the light itself becomes unbearable. The danger does not end there. The blinding white surface of the salt fields reflects intense ultraviolet radiation, and without protective eyewear, prolonged exposure damages the retina, often resulting in early and irreversible blindness. This is also a region of tectonic instability, where the ground can quite literally split apart beneath one's feet as it did dramatically in 2005. And yet, despite centuries of hardship, this labor remains economically indispensable. Each year, the Danakil salt fields supply the market with approximately 1.3 million tons of salt, extracted by hand from a landscape that seems fundamentally hostile to human life. In the lungs of the devil, sulfur miners of Mount Ijen, in eastern Java, Indonesia, lies the crater of Ijen volcano, a place where sulfur is mined in conditions that resemble the set of a horror film brought to life. The work consists of breaking solidified sulfur from active fumaroles, where temperatures and gas concentrations reach critical, often lethal levels. The primary threats are sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. When these gases come into contact with moist tissue, they form acids that slowly erode teeth and scar the lungs. Most miners rely on little more than wet cloths held over their faces, instead of proper gas masks. The reason is brutally practical: the extreme physical strain of the job, carrying 70 to 90 kilograms of sulfur on their shoulders makes breathing through filtered respirators nearly impossible. The consequences are severe and cumulative. Average life expectancy in this profession rarely exceeds 45 to 50 years. Many workers suffer irreversible spinal deformities, chronic respiratory disease, and bodies permanently reshaped by the burden they carry. At Ijen, the earth exhales poison and human lives are spent hauling its breath uphill, one load at a time. The Golden Cage. Offshore oil workers work on offshore oil platforms in the North Sea or the Gulf of Mexico. Is often regarded as highly paid, but it comes with a unique constellation of psychological and physical risks. This is a profession of invisible wounds, where isolation and extreme weather become a worker's most persistent adversaries. Crew members spend weeks or even months confined to narrow, enclosed spaces, cut off from their families and from ordinary life. Over time, this separation fosters depression, anxiety disorders, and dependence on psychoactive substances. The toll is not abstract. Accident statistics are stark. The risk of death on an oil platform is estimated to be 8 times higher than the industrial average. Catastrophes such as the explosion on Piper Alpha, which claimed 167 lives, lay bare the vulnerability of the human body when technological systems fail far from shore. Surrounded by water, steel, and noise, offshore workers live with the constant knowledge that rescue is distant and error is unforgiving. Beaches of death. Shipbreaking in Chittagong. When giant oil tankers and container ships reach the end of their operational lives, they are often sent to the shores of Bangladesh for manual dismantling. The process, known as beaching, involves driving a vessel at full speed directly onto the coastline. Once grounded, thousands of unskilled workers begin tearing it apart using gas cutters and brute force. These ships are, in effect, floating graves packed with toxic asbestos, heavy metals, and residual petroleum products. Medical examinations reveal that approximately 35% of shipbreaking workers in Chittagong suffer from asbestosis, an incurable lung disease caused by inhaling asbestos fibers. The danger is constant: explosions from trapped gases, collapsing steel plates weighing several tons, and fires that spread faster than escape routes allow. Beyond the human cost lies a wider destruction. Chronic contamination of coastal waters poisons marine life, devastates local fisheries, and renders entire shorelines biologically dead. In the global supply chain, shipbreaking yards stand as the final chapter where the machinery of world trade is dismantled by hand, and human lives are spent alongside the vessels they take apart. Snake milkers. Science at the cost of life. Venom extraction is a highly specialized and lethally dangerous profession. essential to the production of antivenoms and to critical medical research. Specialists such as Jim Harrison risk their lives every day, manually restraining the heads of cobras, mambas, and rattlesnakes to collect their venom, working face to face with animals whose defense is instant and irreversible. Over a 40-year career, Harrison survived 9 confirmed bites. He has fallen into coma multiple times and has experienced cardiac arrest. And yet the work continues, driven by necessity. Each year, snake bites claim up to 100,000 human lives worldwide, and the venoms collected in rooms like his are transformed into treatments that save hundreds of thousands more. Still, the margin for error is vanishingly thin. A single slip of the hand, a moment of fatigue, a microscopic fracture in protective equipment, any one of these can result in immediate paralysis or death. Venom extraction exists at the razor's edge of medicine, a profession where progress is paid for in personal risk, and survival depends on absolute precision every single time. Burning ground. Illegal coal mining in Jharia. In the state of Jharkhand, India, lies the city of Jharia, built atop coal seams that have been burning underground for more than 100 years. Illegal miners, including women and children, step onto smoking earth every day to collect coal for resale, working on land that is quite literally on fire. Surface temperatures in zones of active combustion can reach critical levels, while the risk of sudden ground collapse into superheated underground caverns is ever present. The earth can give way without warning, swallowing people whole into flames beneath their feet. Government efforts to relocate residents repeatedly collide with economic reality. The coal beneath Jharia is valued in the billions of dollars, and extraction continues despite the mortal danger it poses to entire communities. Meanwhile, the constant inhalation of toxic smoke laden with carbon monoxide, sulfur compounds, and particulate matter has turned Jharia into one of the most environmentally devastated places on Earth. Here, survival is negotiated daily with fire. The ground burns, the air poisons, and life persists only because there is no safer place left to go. The Cobalt crisis. The dark side of green energy. The global transition toward electric vehicles and renewable energy has generated an immense demand for cobalt. More than 70% of this metal is mined in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where a significant share of production comes from artisanal miners known as cruisers. These workers, including thousands of children, labor inside narrow, unreinforced tunnels with no ventilation and no structural supports. Tunnel collapses are routine, often burying people alive without warning. Control over mining sites frequently fuels armed conflict, corruption, and widespread human rights abuses, turning mineral extraction into a battleground. This is blood cobalt, the central paradox of modern environmentalism. The clean air of European and American cities, the quiet glide of electric cars, is paid for with the bodies of workers in Congo. A green future, built on invisible graves. Manual sewer cleaning. The limit of human degradation. In India and Bangladesh, despite official bans, the practice of manual sewer cleaning persists. Workers, most of them drawn from the lowest castes, historically labeled as untouchables, are forced to enter sewage systems without protective equipment, submerging themselves in liquid waste to clear blockages by hand. The environment inside these sewer tunnels is saturated with methane, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon dioxide. Even a slight rise in concentration can cause instant asphyxiation. Death comes silently and quickly, without warning or spectacle. The statistics are stark. In India, one sanitation worker dies every 6 days while performing this work. This is not merely an occupational hazard, it is a deeply entrenched social wound. Manual scavenging exists at the intersection of poverty, caste discrimination, and institutional neglect, stripping workers not only of safety, but of dignity, legal protection, and access to basic medical care. Here, inequality is not abstract, it is inhaled.